Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Rich Howe. Hey, Rich, how are you?
I'm pretty good, Bant. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm excited to learn more about what you're up to. You've done so many amazing things. Right now, Rich is the chairman and CEO of Inuvo. Inuvo is a company that's focused around advertising technology, ad tech, and Rich is an ad tech innovator. And so we'll go through Inuvo and what the team is up to there in a bit. But before we get there, Rich, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Yeah, of course. It's, I guess maybe an unconventional journey, but, I grew up in rural Canada and spent most of my time right on the border, actually with Vermont, as it turns out. Was fortunate enough to have parents who, thought education was important and, continued to tell me I could do anything I wanted in life. Got 2 degrees, an undergraduate degree in structural engineering, and I did a master's degree with a dissertation really around software design to simulate a train going across a bridge. If you want to know what the dissertation was, and this is like 40 years ago, Bant. So nobody was writing software at the time.
Right.
Took that into my early career as an engineer, really writing software. Actually, some software that designed the first cable stayed bridge of all kinds of bridges across the Mississippi River, and actually, simulate the construction of one of the largest construction projects ever built in the world. It was it's an offshore oil platform off the the eastern coast of North America. Went on from there actually to be an entrepreneur because I had entrepreneurial leanings and started with a number of other people, a company that was an early internet company. It ultimately failed, but it taught me a lot about actually how to build companies, and maybe taught me about what I didn't know as much as what I did know, and what I didn't know was to how to sell. So I actually took my career and said, hey, I know I got all this engineering background, but I need to learn how to sell if I'm going to be somebody who owns a business someday and can lead that business. And did that for actually a data science company, a really unbelievable, cool data science company. The company was called H&C Software. We invented the first neural network based, science related to finding credit card fraud, as it turns out. So parlayed that into starting my second company, right, which was a really cool company, again, in data science. And we actually sold that company back to that company, H&C Software. And then went on to be an executive at a company called Fair Isaac, which I'm sure people will know, probably the single most successful, I would say, algorithm scoring system, helps people figure out, whether somebody's a good credit risk, universally used across the world now. Took that and ended up with a career at Axiom, and then, from there, lo and behold, started, this Inuvo.
That's so exciting. And I mean, I look at those companies and what a progression in terms of how digital technology and even digital media technology has evolved. And certainly some of those companies are very heavy in terms of structuring categorized data and then actually really bringing it and utilizing it in an exciting new way. So tell me what you're building and what you've built at Inuvo. This is an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. We had this vision, mission, if you will, that, at some point in the future, which is now the present, as it turns out, but, that the way modern advertising would need to be done would not need to include the using of consumers' information. And this sounds, it's an easy thing to say, Bant, but it's a hard thing to actually develop and implement in a way that actually produces, a decent return for advertisers. It's a very complicated problem. And so we had this privacy vision early on that we thought privacy would become more important as the years progress, and sooner or later, it would, you'd need to have a solution to this problem. And we were fortunate enough, I guess, to have a background in data science that allowed us to know how it works today. And, when you know how it works now, you can sort of think about how would I design it in a different way, right? Because I know the old way in a way.
Right.
And we knew artificial intelligence technology was going to be the basis for a solution to this problem. And that's what we effectively, invented, commercialized, patented, and then deployed, it here at Inuvo. And we feel pretty good about the fact that we're, at a point in time now where the market forces have aligned with, maybe caught up is a better word, caught up with the technology that we've developed. And we're solving a real problem.
That's really exciting. Tell me how Inuvo's technology is actually utilized today. I know that you do some work in kind of audience prospecting and other areas. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's the complex part of the problem, but it can be simplified, which is, always helpful, because we are talking about artificial intelligence. By design, it's complicated, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. Like any problem, when you get this chance, Bant, to sit back and say, how would I have solved this problem had I not be constrained by all of the ways it's been solved? You really get to free yourself, from the problems, because you don't have all the encumbrances that are necessary to do it the old way. And the what we call the old way, but is really still the current way, is, all of advertising is really built around who people are. You're always trying to figure out who people are and then find other people who look like them. We actually call this who-based marketing. It makes it simple for people to understand, because they get it. The more valuable question to answer when you're thinking about a product, a service, or a brand is not necessarily who someone is. The only reason we do it this way is because the paradigm is that way, because of what we did in the past with the way the foundation was set, right? So we said, hey, the more valuable question is really why. It's not so much who Bant is, it's why does Bant do the things he does? Why does he buy the products and services that he buys?
I was listening to that. I was like, the who is Bant, and then why Bant?
Why Bant?
Right. Anyways, no, keep going. Yeah.
So this was the question we asked ourselves: could we design a technology that would not have to use anything informational, the identity of or the data of a person, and yet still be able to figure out the reasons why they, for instance, might be interested in a product, or they might be interested in a brand, or they might be interested just in, in visiting a website. There's really no limitation, because there's different reasons why, behind all of those actions, if you will.
Right.
And we were fortunate enough to actually, uncover a technology that first started in a machine learning lab at UCLA, and we acquired all the rights to that technology, and then we commercialized it to for advertising, because we said, oh, here's a technology that, uses nothing other than the information that's available, on web pages to be able to figure out these reasons why. And we deployed it. And so, and now we've obviously at our scale, because we're over $20 million a quarter now in revenue. We've done it successfully for many, many clients. We know it works, and it doesn't use these identity mechanisms or consumer data. And it opens up our clients to understanding things about their consumers without violating those consumers' privacy. That's way broader. Like the data sets are way broader because we're not constrained by this sort of who-based marketing. So it's not only fun, but it's pretty cool when you can go into an advertiser and show them things they didn't know. Yeah,
I love that. Now, the customers for Inuvo are advertising clients? Okay.
Well, we have number of different kinds of clients, right? Because the ad industry, is made up of different types of clients. Yes, we have direct clients where we will work with them and effectively, do all of the digital marketing for them. Then we have agencies who, in the US and around the world are many times, managing the advertising on behalf of clients. And so they've got the media budgets, and we empower them as well with our technology. So there's sort of, we can do it either way.
That's great. Well, I mean, congratulations. And certainly, I mean, you're touching on some major topics that we've seen evolve very quickly. Certainly the topics like privacy started perhaps as a bigger issue in Europe, and then has now extended over to the US, as I would imagine really large advertisers and companies try to wrestle for a unified global solution. And as the topic of privacy has become more important in the States, when you look out into the marketplace today, where are we in terms of this evolution into perhaps thinking about marketing and the use of identity in a new way?
This is known generally by people who might listen to this, this podcast as the cookie issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Of course, it's way more complicated than that, but it's called the cookie issue. And the direct answer to your question is it's already, for the most part, over. And by that I mean, effectively what happens in an advertising transaction is you're trying to target the cookie ID, the person, the who,
Mm-hmm.
and that's located in the cookie.
Right.
And already, Bant, some 50 to 75% of those transactions don't have a viable ID that you can target. So, in our mind, like, this problem is already over. Now, what people don't generally realize is that, most of the advertising is still done at this, identity level. And what's happening is everybody's really just competing for this pool of, like, call it, 50 to 25% to 50% of the transactions. And they're sort of ignoring the rest of them right now. And that's not good for advertisers because, demand and supply. I mean, smaller supply of places you can figure out how to target someone makes the price go higher. Guess who pays that? The advertiser, right? And so everybody's competing there. And that's why we wanted, to design this tech. We're not constrained by that. So we actually have access to sort of inventory, basically all of it, because we don't use these mechanisms. That gives us an advantage, to be able to not worry about, having to compete with everybody else for this sort of limited pool of identities. So it helps our clients.
No, I could see that. And it's interesting right now because we see and hear about all these new technologies, generally, I guess, loosely bucketed under this idea of the Web3 stage of development. Sometimes we hear flippantly about crypto, but really about blockchain technology. And when you look in this kind of meta world that everyone's talking about, I can only see identity becoming even more important to try to establish and to track in a meaningful way, but perhaps in a way where instead of we go after the who, we go after the why of Web3, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, people, industries struggle, right? Especially when they're mature, to change. And maybe going back to Inuvo, it's like, being at the age we are with the experience we have on our team, we know that the thing that usually leads to, a really successful company, as opposed to, let's say, a moderately successful company, is that you aligned yourself with an industry change because that the incumbents in that industry are going to struggle to adapt, not because they're not smart enough, but because they're sort of vested, in the billions of dollars they spent developing the technologies they have, that they kind of got to make the square peg work in the round hole going forward. Right. And the beauty of being, a quick moving company that, doesn't have to worry about that is you don't worry about it. You're like, I don't have that problem, right? I got other problems, but I don't have that problem, right? Yeah. And so with our industry, there is no doubt in my mind, consumers have overwhelmingly told everybody in advertising, hey, stop using my information. We saw this with Apple. Apple's led the charge with this. And, they eliminated this in iOS, and they've eliminated it with apps. And what happened? We all have if we had an iOS device, you've got an app, and what are they asking you these days? Do you want to let this thing track your use? What are you saying, Bant? The same thing everybody is. You're like, no,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Although I think like any customer out there, we all have that eerie feeling that it's happening anyway,
Right.
where, you'll be in a passive conversation, Rich, you and I will talk about something like, basketball or baseball or something. And then the next day I seem to only get basketball or baseball information sent to me. So you're like, somebody's watching me.
It's not luck, is it?
No.
Yeah,
Something's going on. And I think it's finding that balance. And what it sounds to me like Inuvo has really come to the market with a very, very progressive model that is allowing for that information to be captured, but perhaps in a way that's really not going after that identity-based data, which is such a sensitive topic for customers as well as businesses.
Completely. That's exactly what we're doing. And it's what we wanted to do. So, consumers, at least when our technology is being used, we don't know who anyone is. We don't care who anyone is. We don't try to stitch together who you are across devices so we can, use that. We don't care about that stuff. We don't use it. We just care about, whether or not we can match, what the advertiser's objectives are with, the web pages that are out there and available to buy media inventory on. And we figured out a really, really great way to do that. Now, as would be the case, of course, there's always consumers who just don't like ads at all, Bant, but hey, at least for the foreseeable future, it's the advertising dollars that pay for all of us to have the great internet experience that we have.
Yeah, I completely understand that. There certainly will be purists, but I mean, I think that if you look at even connected TV models like Netflix, the purist position is starting to lose traction as people are going to actually have to face the realities of costs.
Yes.
Content ain't free.
No,
So
intellectual property, right? It's like somebody developed that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Valuable. Well, listen, let me change gears a little bit, Rich. I can see you've done a ton of work in, major trends like this one that we're talking about, but I'd be curious to kind of hear what your experience has been over the last couple of years and perhaps how things like the pandemic have shifted the way that you've thought about operating your business, perhaps how you've gone to market. I mean, the trend that Inuvo is part of started well before the pandemic, but sometimes, as I like to say, that one voice in the boardroom that voted against change seemed to get outvoted during the pandemic, Yeah. So tell me about your experience.
Well, that's a consequence of our human experience to be risk averse, I guess, is what I would say. Look, the pandemic's been a very interesting, and I guess first in the history of the world, at least one that you could watch. There's obviously been other pandemics, in the world, but this is the first one where it's like there's you can actually watch it and see what's going on. And it did have an impact on business, mostly in the way that we collaborate with each other, both internally in our company and externally with our clients. So it's really set a new model for that. I can only tell you what we have done in this regard and there's some important learnings from this. We've moved to what's called a hybrid model, right? We've got people who come in the office at least 2 times a week, and then the rest of the time, they're working from home. And it seems to be working really, really well. And we wanted to do that because the human experience, you need to have it. And we recognize that. And our people recognize that, particularly with product innovation and creative stuff. It's like, it's hard to do it in 2D like you and I are doing it.
Yeah.
In spite of the great tools that are available, by the way, to do that. It's just really hard. It'll never replicate the sitting in a room with a bunch of your colleagues, just kind of, struggling it out, with whiteboards and stuff. So we believe strongly you need to have that, that social, if you will, interaction piece within the business. And we fostered that. And the good news is it's working. I would say it works a lot better with the core group of people who were always involved in Inuvo. When we bring new people on, it's a little harder, so we're learning it's like harder now because a new person comes in, they came in post-pandemic, there's a new model for this that it's a little harder to kind of get them in the game, in the fold, if you will, is what we're learning. And of course, the younger generation also kind of has this predisposition to be okay, being at home all the time and interacting this way. And they maybe just don't understand how important it is to interact with people.
Yeah.
So, internally, that's kind of what's been going on, and the biggest impact. Externally, there's this, like, it's impacting the sales model, right? And so, you're trying to, access people, and you're trying to do it digitally, and that's a new environment. And it's, it also has its pluses and minuses. And again, they're probably related to the same thing. It's like, the bigger your company gets and the more a client's spending money with you, the more you really have to develop these these social relationships with people, because it comes, nobody's going to spend 10 or $20 million a year with you, without trusting you. And it's, I don't know, it's hard to figure out how to, do I trust these people or not, on a 2D screen. So I think we're trying to find our way through that too.
Yeah. And I could see that the relationships that you'll build with advertisers could scale quickly, so that the reality would be that you become more and more of a trusted partner, and certainly kind of finding that balance between, virtual and real is key. I'd say that you could use this amazing set of technologies from a company called Inuvo to help prospect some more audiences for you.
Thank you.
So, Rich, when we look out, 2022 has become a year where, if you'd asked me going into 2022, I was very excited about 2022 being a year where things were going to return to normal. And we were all very excited, very enthusiastic. It's certainly been a whirlwind of a year, exciting year in some respects, challenging in others. When you look out in the short term and in the midterm, what are you seeing and what's exciting for you?
Yeah, in the short term, maybe specifically to your what you're saying about, we all came in this year thinking, hey, everything's, cool, green light all the way, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, we're like, now I think many of us are like, hey, are we in a recession? I don't know.
Exactly.
Like, we're kind of, are we or are we not? If it is one, it's not one like we've ever seen. Doesn't mean it isn't one. But it's like, hey, it's kind of this weird sort of, environment. And I would say we think that way, and our clients do. It's like, I think everybody's like us. They're like, is it? I don't know. Right. So I think that's what's going on in the short term. It's everybody's kind of, wait and see. I think for us, because we've got this solution that solves a problem that's a huge problem in a huge industry. Sure, if there is, an economic downturn, I mean, everybody's businesses get impacted by that. Right. But we've got this solution that, has to be used by people going forward, because the problem they have is not going away just because there's a recession.
I hear you.
We've got what would you call it? Maybe a tailwind, so that's an industry tailwind that makes us feel good about the fact that even if there is a downturn in the economics over the next little while, we'll still have this tailwind with people having to, to use something different, to basically, get the same kind of return they used to get.
Yeah, I completely agree. Inuvo certainly is baked in a broader trend that we've seen in terms of restructuring and rebuilding a way for advertisers to identify and prospect efficiently and effectively. And certainly, as every major advertiser out there suddenly found themselves challenged on accessing second tier and third tier data, and suddenly those things were disappearing on them, they were left with a dearth of choices. And so I can see how what you're delivering really helps them in the short term and in the midterm, and really building a new model for them in the longer term. Rich, it's been amazing talking to you. If someone was out there wanted to learn more about what Inuvo is up to, where should they go to find more information? Inuvo.com.
There's a whole bunch of case studies that they can, peruse through. And of course, like every other site, there's a button there to say, hey, I want to know more. Right. And, sometimes I respond. So it's like, because I I like to.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on UNCAGED today. We've been speaking with Rich Howe. He is the chairman and CEO of Inuvo, which is a company that is changing the paradigm for how information is created and used online for prospecting audiences. And really, I would say maybe even more than that, reinventing the way we think of identity and how to reach those identifiable audiences. So Rich, thank you so much for being on UNCAGED, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Ben.
Cheers.